Hi, folks. Much better day today here in Harrisonburg, and we're going to talk about Chapter 1, just an introduction to communication research. Okay, so just kind of a basic 10,000 feet view here. Research is about asking questions, in my opinion. Methods are something that we use to answer questions, as you probably can know and figure out. But if we don't have a good question to start with, then all of the great and rigorous fancy methods in the world don't actually give us anything because the question that we're asking doesn't result in anything. And so the method can be whatever the method wants to be, but without a good question to start with, we don't have anything in the end. So we're also concerned with, especially in communication research, solving problems. Most of our communication research has to do with some sort of issue or need that the public, organizations, politicians might have that we think we can contribute to or help in some way. And so a lot of our research is applied. Theoretical research is about contributing to the general knowledge. So how individuals interact is something that many people have an interest to know, and so we get a lot of popular press books that are actually based in communication theory and communication research. And so our research contributes to the general knowledge for the general public. And we always want to have a rigorous methodological approach. No matter if you're doing survey research or a critical analysis, you want to be rigorous in how you're determining the methodological approach that you're using and how you're actually going about using that methodological approach. So some basics on communication theory. You probably remember this from 240 or 245, but just some kind of basic overview properties of theory. A theory is a description, an explanation, an articulation of how we think things are, so description, how they should be, a prescription, or what things mean, some sort of explanation of a complex phenomena. So the theory of gravity or the theory of relativity explain things that exist. An axiom is a statement or a claim about something that we have seen demonstrated over and over again in research, so much so that we consider it almost to be a law. So in uncertainty reduction theory, which your textbook uses as an example, people are motivated to reduce their uncertainty in initial interactions with others. And so they have conversations and look for commonalities. And once they find a commonality, they might continue talking about that specific topic of conversation as they go so that they can reduce their anxiety. Speech accommodation also has some axioms, maybe suggesting that when we talk with someone who speaks fast, we tend to speak faster. When we talk with someone that speaks slowly, we tend to speak slower. And those things are axioms. Those are laws or central tenets or claims of a specific theory. And a proposition is a prediction that we might make based on an axiom or a theoretical explanation. And so as far as uncertainty reduction goes, I might develop a proposition that says Stan and Tim have never met each other. In their initial interaction, their conversation will be exploratory until they find a commonality, in which case they'll then have an extended conversation about that commonality. And so that's a theory, an axiom, and a proposition. Okay, the main contribution of this chapter are the different ways of knowing. So we have knowledge by tenacity, authority, a priori, and method of science. So tenacity is social proof. These are the sort of things that we hold to be true because we hold them to be true. And because we've maybe grown up in that way, we've seen it play out that way in our lives. So some folks that you know who are very negative, their knowledge may be that the deck is stacked against them and they don't have a chance. And you ask them why they would think such a thing, and they just say, because that's just how my life has been. That's an example of tenacity as a way of knowing. A little bit more concrete example, a little bit more rigorous example would be religion. Most religious beliefs, there's not physical proof for the religious beliefs that people have, but they are very, very strongly held beliefs. And as a result, these sort of things can't really be questioned. If you ask someone, or if you question someone who's deeply religious about their religious beliefs, or question someone that's deeply atheistic about their beliefs, they're not likely to budge. They might have a conversation with you, but they're not likely to accept challenges. And that's because they are very, very strongly held beliefs that are based in kind of a social proof sort of situation, or just based on life experience. Knowledge by authority is what we consider a credible source, kind of going back to the basics of communication. When experts tell us something, we tend to accept those things to be true, which is why experts have to be so careful to have an ethical component. Think about when you go to your physician. If you go in and your back is hurting and it's been really hurting and all of a sudden it gets worse and you have no idea what it is, and you stretch and you get a massage and nothing helps, and you go in and your doctor says you have a bulging disc in your back, you believe them because that's a credible source. That person has a great deal of authority. A priori grounds is about intuition, and so this one is a little bit more vague, a little bit more difficult to get your head around. Your textbook, I think, is kind of interesting. It reads, knowing on a priori grounds, which happens when we know something intuitively before we have experienced it. And so the best way to kind of think about this would be value-laden or intuition sort of things. If we see somebody that looks a little sketchy and we feel like they might do something to harm us, that'd be a priori knowledge. It's an intuition. And oftentimes we base decisions about right or wrong based on our own kind of intuitive beliefs about justice and fairness. We wouldn't go to the law to say it's right or wrong to steal. We would just know that intuitively. And then finally, one more consistent with our course, the method of science. And we can think of kind of the scientific method here. We make a claim, and we don't just accept that claim because other people do, or because a credible person told us that, or because we felt that it was true. We actually test it through some sort of rigorous methodological experiment or methodological process that allows us to make reasonable conclusions about the claims that we're making. So tenacity, authority, a priori, and method of science. One of the things that I really like about this textbook is that it frames research as an argument, as writing an argument. And so it gives us the Toulmin model of argument as a frame to understand basically everything as we go from here all the way to the end of the 4 weeks. And I think it's just incredibly important to think about what you're doing, the papers that you're writing, is actually writing an argument. For you all, you're only going to be writing a literature review and a methods section. So your hypotheses or research questions are in fact your claims. Those are the things that you're trying to justify in your literature review. When we write a literature review, and we'll talk about this at great length over the next couple weeks, but we are really trying to justify our hypotheses. So what we're basically saying is there's all of this literature that's out there, and all of this literature either has a gap in it, has a problem with it, or it leads me to this specific question that I have to extend that literature. That problem, that gap, or that specific question that I'm led to from the literature becomes my claim. In fact, when we think about a hypothesis, we're actually stating a claim. For most of you, you'll be asking research questions because you're not familiar enough with the literature to know whether or not you should be using a hypothesis or a research question, and that's okay. But we want to think about those two things, hypotheses and research questions, as claims. As we write, we're writing claims that we have to back up. Data is how we back that up. Now, you might be thinking in a methods class, data is going to be numbers, it's going to be text, it's going to be surveys and observations. And while all that's true, when we think about the literature review, we want to think about existing literature that we're reading and bringing into our literature review as data. It is supporting or building us to the hypothesis or research question that we're going to be writing and then subsequently investigating. And the warrant is how well our data leads us to our claim. And so that's the connection between the evidence that we're presenting and the subsequent claim that we're trying to prove. And what we obviously want to start with is the claim, and then we want to back it up. That's how we kind of start the thinking and writing process. Now, when you actually write your paper, you'll do it kind of in reverse. You'll start with data. You'll build, you'll build, you'll build. You'll make a case for something missing in the literature or for a new question that you want to ask in the literature. And that data will lead you to your hypothesis or research question, which will be your claim. This is just, I think, very helpful to think about research as actually constructing and writing an argument, not simply reporting on a lot of different articles that you've read. We need to be seamlessly synthesizing existing literature together in the form of an argument. So when you read the articles that you're going to put in your paper, they become pieces of evidence that you're going to use to try and build a case for your claim. They're not just simply giving us information about what's in a field of literature. So we have two different types of papers that result from communication research: a research report and a critical essay. A research report is social scientific in nature. It tends to be in that field. And basically what we're doing is summarizing a study that we've done in which we've collected data. A critical essay is a manuscript that analyzes a specific text and interprets that specific text to try and support an existing claim or a new claim. And we'll talk about these things in great detail over the next few slides.